Patriots' first offensive plays.
What's going on, everyone? Mike Kadlick and Taylor Kyles here, back with another episode of the Patriots Daily Podcast, powered by our good friends over at Prize Picks. We'll hear a little bit from them later on. But first, Taylor, happy midweek. The offseason continues, not much going on. So what we're going to do today is, like last week, go through all of the defensive position groups, talk a little bit about each, rank them out, see which ones need help and which ones seem rip-roaring and ready to go for the 2025 season. And then after we get through that, we're going to hop over to our Discord channel at 3:30 and talk with you guys all over there as well. We'll do a little bit of a mailbag / Q&A on the Discord, as you guys may already know. Or if you don't, head over to clnsmedia.com/Discord. Join our Discord channel, and our Patriots Press Pass members will be able to ask us questions. Everybody can join. So even if you're not a member of Press Pass, come over to Discord, join the fun, and members can hop on stage with myself and Taylor and ask us some Patriots questions. So step one, join Discord, clnsmedia.com/Discord. Once you're in, drop your username in the chat. We can get you verified and then go from there, and we'll have a little fun at 3:30. Anything Patriots, anything offseason related, we'll talk about it over there after this pod for 15, 20 minutes or so, however long it takes to get your questions answered. But first and foremost, like I said, we're going to rank the Patriots defensive position groups, a side of the ball that, I think, frankly, Taylor, I'm sure you agree, has we're much more confident in the defense than the offense right now, but also just going into the season. A couple acquisitions, Milton Williams, Robert Spillane, a familiar face with Josh McDaniels anyway, and Marcus Epps, and a couple other ones on that side of the ball. Christian Gonzalez, one of the better young cornerbacks in the NFL. I need to ask why you're smirking.
Oh, no, I misheard the McDaniels and Marcus Epps thing. It took me a second. I was like,
oh, okay. Yes, with the Raiders. A lot of additions on that side. Some people coming back. Christian Barmore starting to get healthy. Looks like he will be full go once training camp starts. So before we get into the rankings, just your thoughts on the Patriots defense entering training camp and where they'll be at relative to some of the rest of the units, I guess, across the league.
It's a much more fun position group to talk about than the Patriots offense because there's a little bit more certainty. There's more high-end talent where you expect guys to produce at a high level versus the Patriots where you're hoping guys develop into more role players, but there's not a whole lot of, outside of Drake May or Mike Nwenu, there's not really a lot of guys on that side of the ball where you're really expecting them to be near the top of their position this year. So it's more fun. A group that, if it stays healthy, if this Mike Vrabel defense is as disciplined and well-prepared as we expect, then I think it should be one of the better units in the league, especially with Terrell Williams and his history of success on the defensive line. Now, obviously, he hasn't been present. They're still communicating with him, and I know he's still doing meetings. So it's going to be interesting to see how or if, that has any kind of impact once the season actually starts. But while I know one critique of Vrabel's defenses is that, he doesn't always raise the floor necessarily in terms of, he will get the most out of what's there. But there's not a whole lot of schematic advances necessarily that you associate with Vrabel. And even still, going through his defenses, they're very smart. You can tell it's like a Bill Belichick defense where the pattern distribution, when you see defenders kind of passing things off in zone or in match coverages, it looks like they know what they're expecting versus last season where there were so many times where it just felt like guys did not know what was coming a lot of the time. So again, with all the veterans you have, talented veterans, plus, and this is going to be a big theme, a lot of depth and I think more young upside than I think they really get credit for. I think this is going to be one of the better defenses in the league, specifically because they're not relying on one or two people anymore like they kind of have in years past. Even if a couple dominoes fall, I think they're going to be in a better shape to at least be an above average to average defense, even if they were to lose a couple key pieces.
Yeah, 100%. And I think I missed Harold Landry in that list as well. Someone with familiarity with Mike Vrabel, who is obviously part of that defensive front seven defensive line. So I agree with all your points. I think they're in much better shape than they were last year, not only personnel wise, but also coaching wise. And we talked about it a couple of weeks ago with Keon White's comments about he feels like he has a real coach now. While pointed towards Gerard Mayo, it felt like, it's the truth. There's so much more experience on that side of the football now on the coaching staff that have done it before, have done it at a high level, where last year, it's sure, Jerry Montgomery did have some experience coaching with Green Bay for a long time, but from the top down with Gerard Mayo and DeMarcus Covington, it was two guys in their first year in their roles. And it just felt like, again, I don't want to keep rehashing it, but now they have guys who they can lean on to, teach them how to play NFL defense and NFL football. So I think it's definitely, a step above last year. I'm curious to see how Terrell Williams gets back integrated, when and if he comes back. If he is already back, we don't know that information yet. But obviously a big step is getting him back in the building. Obviously wishing for his health, first and foremost. But let's get into ranking these defensive groups. Now, figure we go worst to first like we did with the offense and go through defensive line, linebackers, safeties, cornerbacks. Did you want to split off edge, linebackers, D-line, or kind of keep those guys?
Yeah, I split up defensive tackle. So I have tackle. I don't want to say. I have defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, cornerback, and safety.
Perfect. All right, sounds good. So we'll go 5 through 1. Taylor, what is your 5th/worst position group on the Patriots defense?
So ironically, this is one that got some love from PFF. I think last week, one of the higher rated groups in the league, and that's linebackers.
Okay.
And really what that goes to show is I think the fact that they are one of the deeper linebacker cores in the league, and still this is probably the worst position when you just look through. Again, this is going based on starting talent, the depth that they have, and the young upside. Because obviously you need that depth, that's important, but also you want to have some young guys on the back end where if they do have to step up, you either have that experienced veteran and at least a young player that you can have as a rotational kind of presence. For linebacker, the biggest issue for me is the lack of proven every down talent. And a big part of that is Jelani Tavai, right? So he has the calf injury, which even if he comes back, it's not the kind of injury that you just assume he's going to come back and be 100%. There's still a level of, okay, well, if he does have the calf, could that maybe turn into a different type of injury because of the fact that he's going to have to kind of overcompensate. Oh, where did I go? So he may have to overcompensate to make sure you're good. To make sure that he's still in good shape. But for most of these, I'm trying to assume that these players will at least have decent health. Relative to their situations, of course. But Robert Spillane, obviously, is one of the better middle linebackers in the NFL. Now, he doesn't have the elite athleticism to be like one of the best guys, but his instincts, his discipline, and his IQ keep him around the ball consistently. I think he's going to be an every down presence, and that is the expectation. Christian Ellis looked like he was the top guy once Jelani Tavai did go down. Now, he's a guy where he's very athletic. I think he's a plus in coverage. I think he's a plus as a blitzer. As a run defender, he's definitely better than a guy who you would really expect to be more of that dime kind of coverage style linebacker. I'd like to see him take another step forward with better coaching, because I thought last year the fact that he was probably their best linebacker as someone who didn't have a ton of NFL experience playing linebacker, who had a first-year coach at the position, I did think that was impressive. Did get beat by Travion Henderson I think it was either in minicamp, I think it was the first day, right after he had a rep where he took Demario Douglas away. So there's still going to be some growing pains. There's still some learning he has to do. And if Christian Ellis is a starter, even if he's rotational, it kind of dings the group, because almost every other position has two guys where you know exactly what you're going to get from them as starters, and they're plus players. With Ellis, we just don't know that he's necessarily going to be that, even though I really do like him. And then again, Tavai, he's a good run defender. He's got positional versatility. We're not going to mention special team because this is defense, but he's still a good player. And if Mike Vrabel thinks that he can make the fact that he's 250 pounds, unlike some of the smaller linebackers he typically works with, is going to be okay, I'm good with it. Jack Gibbons, I think, is one of the higher end backup linebackers, because he's someone who, again, has played in this Mike Vrabel defense for multiple seasons, is comfortable with it. Like Spillane, isn't the best athlete, but is very smart, doesn't make a lot of glaring mistakes, and he's a good tackler. And then Marte Mapu, that's another thing, is just there's so much uncertainty with certain guys at this spot, where given to Tavai, what they are going to be as rotational players, but with Mapu, we really don't, right? Because all we really know is that he really needs work as a tackler. His instincts are all up and down. They can be exceptional, and then sometimes it looks like he's never played football a day in his life. But Mike Vrabel likes him. He said as a blitzer, and he likes his length. And the kid's athletic. So I think he's a good depth player to have, even if he is an unknown. And then for young upside, that's probably one of the biggest things that dings this group. The best player you really have is Monty Rice, I think, is a developmental piece. And even if he does develop in linebacker, I think on this team with Mike Vrabel, is going to be a spot where they are able to develop, especially linebackers. Like, you can get undrafted guys and turn them into really good players, or late round guys. It just takes so long to develop, and a lot of it's IQ at linebacker. But Rice made some plays in camp. Or not Monty Rice, I'm sorry. Oh my God, Monty Rice was already on. He's been on the Titans before. The kid out of
Gibbons?
Cam Riley.
Oh, Cam Riley. Yeah.
Scrap everything I just said. That was for Cam Riley.
Sure.
But I do like at least the fact he made some plays in camp and showed us a little something. And he's a guy I'm going to be looking out for more. So linebackers at the bottom. But again, he got a mix of guys where what they are as rotational players. But what puts it low for me is I think that everyone but Spillane is strictly a rotational player, which it's tough with these positions in these rankings. Not a lot of teams have two linebackers that they never take off the field. But, considering for most positions you do have at least two players, the fact they don't have a proven starter or a guy where if Spillane went down, you're saying, okay, I want you to play every down. Jack Gibbons could be that guy, but really, even if he is your new middle linebacker, you're probably rotating him with someone more athletic in passing situations.
Yeah, I'm higher on the linebackers this year, obviously, than last year. I think they've improved the room. But looking back at that PFF article that you had sent me the other day, and the title is NFL Linebacker Unit Rankings, Eagles and Patriots carry elite units. Elite feels like a stretch to me for this Patriots linebacker room. And I'm just looking,
maybe, but
I'm even looking at the teams ranked below them. So the Patriots were ranked behind the Eagles and the Lions for their linebacker rooms. But then they were ranked ahead of the Chiefs and Commanders. And I look at the Chiefs with Nick Bolton, Leo Chenal, and Drew Tranquill, who's kind of a tweener, but you consider him a linebacker. And then Washington with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu. Like, those seem like better cores than Robert Spillane and Jelani Tavai, who I guess he was serviceable last year for a defense that wasn't great overall. But now he comes into camp hurt. He tweaked his calf during minicamp or during OTAs, and that could kind of be a TBD even coming into the season. So maybe with the depth they're better, but elite just feels like a stretch to me. And I'm higher on Robert Spillane now than I was when they first signed him. I think that not only the intangibles, but his play on the field over the last couple seasons, specifically with Vegas, but even with in Tennessee with Vrabel, it feels like he's going to take that next step, especially now being sort of the head man in that room. But third in the NFL, again, feels like a stretch to me. And I hope that they can get there. I'm just a little bit more hesitant than I think obviously PFF is here.
Oh my God, that's a terrifying stat. It's really damning for the rest of the defense. That's true. That's very sad. Although obviously, like I said, the plays where he does contribute to a turnover, he looks awesome. And then there's the ones where, he's just covering grass. But I think elite may be a stretch, and they're going on their grades. So that's also
that's a good point.
Facing these guys, that's a big part of it. But yeah, I think with Bobby Wagner and Frankie Louvu, I see the debate at least because the Patriots probably have better depth. Bobby Wagner's 35 years old. Frankie Louvu is a guy you have to put him in a specific role, and you can pick on him. Like we saw in the playoffs last year where everybody knew he was going to try to jump over the pile, and it would just get him on the hard count, and eventually he'll jump. So yeah, but still, I could definitely see the Chiefs, I could see a debate for that. But I think the Patriots is top 5, especially considering like not a lot of teams are 4 deep, much less potentially 5 deep at linebacker. And that's assuming they even keep all these guys. That's another important thing to consider. But I think they should be up there. But yeah, I would agree that elite's probably stretching.
Which is interesting, and it's a good segue to get into our next room because on a defense where the linebackers seem like they're in a decent spot, they do rank last on your list of position groups. So who's next, and what room are you even higher on than these linebackers?
This one was tough. I have cornerback, and the reason it was tough is because Gonzo's obviously carrying this room. Right? That's your blue chip, your all pro. Usually I would maybe bump them a little bit higher because he's such a great player. And obviously Carlton Davis, like that's immediately going to be one of the best cornerback duos in the NFL. The biggest, and then Marcus Jones, I consider him depth because he's going to rotate. They're going to have their big nickel where it's going to be a Jabril Peppers or a Duggar or a Woodson or whomever. So Marcus Jones isn't a full-time player, but if you are asking him to cover a slot receiver, he's probably going to do a pretty good job. Alex Saucin, I still like his depth, but it's literally a cliff after that. And that's the part that scares me. Where, again, like, yeah, you're talking about once you get down to your 5th corner. Oh, no. But even still, like, Alex Austin, I do like as a player, and I think he is good depth, but we still don't know exactly what he is.
Right.
Like, this feels like if you're going to be a role player, then the 3rd year is where I feel like you have enough of a track record to say, okay, this is what this guy is. Because that's hard enough to do with 2 full seasons of tape. But the fact that, like, we have no idea what Isaiah Bolden is at this point, and then it's Marcellus Dial and Kobe Minor. Like, those are guys you don't want to play.
No.
So, again, this really was tough. I just think at other positions they have more depth. And also, there's no young upside. I wouldn't consider Marcellus Dial and Kobe Minor young upside because they were taken at the end of the draft. Gonzalez, I wouldn't consider him really young upside.
He's a proven veteran now. His upside we've seen.
We know what he is. So the top of this position group is fantastic, but it really does Alex Austin is still relatively an unknown, and he's not like a great backup. It's at least you would like a younger player where you're saying, okay, down the road, maybe he takes over for Carlton Davis. Now the team couldn't plug every hole. They got depth where they could, and I commend them for doing that, especially stretching out their draft picks to do that in the back end. But yeah, the depth is scary after that, where if Gonzo did go down for whatever reason, are you really happy with Marcus Jones and Carlton Davis? And Carlton Davis is kind of up and down. That's another thing where, yes, I want to assume that a lot of these guys will be healthy for most of the year, but Gonzo has missed it. Again, it was the last game of the year.
Was Marcus Jones.
Yeah, Marcus Jones. There's a lot of injury concerns here as well that I think need to be addressed. It's not like Barmore where that was a freak thing that happened and he's saying I've been cleared. That's a little bit different. But the fact that I'm not going to say Gonzo's an injury risk or anything, but he did have an injury in back-to-back years. Carlton Davis, we know what he is. Marcus Jones is what he is. So yeah, that's really it. When this group is healthy and they're on their game, one of the best units in the league. And again, a testament to this defense and how stacked they are now at a lot more spots. Or at least deep they are at more spots. But yeah, that one is just too top heavy for me to have it any higher.
Yeah, top heavy is a good way to word it. When I was going through the list of rooms, I frankly forgot about Carlton Davis for a second because he missed so much time in the offseason. He wasn't there. So he was out of sight, out of mind for me. But so I was like, they're five. It's Gonzo and who else? Obviously they make that signing. But you mentioned he's kind of been up and down in his career. Marcus Jones has been the same, whether it's injury, whether it's play. It's a short-term good room. Long-term, there's question marks because Davis is older. Marcus Jones, you don't know about. It's really, again, still Gonzo and everybody else to me. So, when I remembered Carlton Davis, I was like, okay, that's a good 1-2 punch. We can move them up the board. But I agree. I think.
My bad.
No, good. Go.
Just really quick, and also just corner is one of those positions where, because I was kind of thinking, how do you replenish it? It's not like linebacker or safety where you can find some gems later in the draft because a lot of it is just so IQ heavy. You can kind of make up for not being an elite athlete. Corner, you have to be a great athlete, right? And if you're not, you need to be crazy smart and never make mistakes. So if you're looking long-term and how they address this, I think they can go another year with taking offense with their top 3 picks. But I would probably say the next priority should maybe be cornerback, just so they can get another young guy. Again, because Davis is going to be here for a while. Marcus Jones might not be. And I think Alex Austin is here for another 2 years. I
can't remember his contract. I know he was one of those, not a UDFA, but he was a restricted free agent for a couple seasons back-to-back. I think he's only on a 1-year deal right now because he's still less than 4 years as a rookie that didn't sign with his team or something like that. So
he's in a contract year. Yeah,
he is. Okay. So there's not a ton of there's not really a pipeline there outside of, not even outside of Christian Gonzalez, because he's not a pipeline guy. He is your guy. So I would tend to agree. I think there's more outside of Gonzo. There's more questions than answers in the room. And it remains to be seen. But we will get back to the rest of our rankings in just a second. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Prize Picks. Because Prize Picks is the best place to turn your sports knowledge into cash. With millions of members, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. And all you got to do is pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 2,000 times your cash. So run your game all season long on Prize Picks. The app is super easy to use, and they always put their members first with withdrawals that are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I get my money as little as 15 minutes, and you will be able to do the same on Prize Picks. They also offer Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this sports season. And while hockey and basketball have come to an end, women's basketball and baseball continue to rip roll throughout the summer, and you can continue to get in on that action with the Prize Picks app. It is the best place to win real money. So head over there today, download the app, and use code CLNS for $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Thanks again to Prize Picks, as always, for sponsoring this show. I will also remind us here while we're on the ad break that after this, we're going to hop over to our Discord channel and continue the conversation. So if you're if you want to join that, hop in clnsmedia.com/Discord. Anybody can join. And if you're a Patriots Press Pass member, you can ask questions on stage with us. So you don't want to miss that. We're going to try and build out that Discord community as well as our YouTube and X friends as well. So make sure to join in on there. clnsmedia.com/Discord will be on there at 3:30 after today's show. All right, Taylor, we've done linebackers. We've done quarterbacks. We have 3 more. Who is your third best position group on the Patriots?
So here I've got safety. And this is because I think this is a position group where you start to see there's a mix of both starting talent and depth and young upside. Obviously, Jabril Peppers and Kyle Duggar are going to be your starters. Now, Duggar has not played yet. He's a veteran, so you still know what you're getting out of him. It is up in the air, like how is he going to play when he actually gets back on the field? But I think more than anything, it's just going to be kind of getting his legs back under him, and you hope that that doesn't end up happening later where he ends up on PUP or like can't participate in the whole summer. That would definitely ding this group a little bit. But still, Peppers and Duggar are inarguably one of the better safety duos in the league. Like really, last year, Peppers was playing well until he got hurt. And Duggar was definitely up and down, but it's impossible to argue that the injury that he suffered, which happened in week 4, was that the same game that Peppers got hurt? Well, the game or the game after, but that injury clearly impacted him the rest of the year. And then on top of the coaching, I think that just all those things contributed. Even though it was his second down year in a row, he will kind of be on notice for me. But still, you know what you're getting out of those guys. Jalen Hawkins has been the starter. Now, he's inoffensive, right? He's not a guy that you think is going to make a lot of glaring mistakes. He's a good communicator, and clearly is someone they feel comfortable being the top guy with Duggar out. So I think that's pretty good depth. Del Pettis. And one thing I do want to distinguish is there's a difference between like rotational depth, where it's someone that you want to include in the game plan. You're hoping they're going to be on the field. So like Marcus Jones is rotational depth because there was a part for him in the game plan. Alex Austin is not, because if everything goes well, Alex Austin's ever seeing the field. Jalen Hawkins and Del Pettis, you don't actually want them playing necessarily, but if you're not really liking your depth or you're in those 3 safety packages, you could definitely have them rotate if need be. And then Marcus Epps. The really big thing here is that Hawkins and Epps give you so much experience. Again, not spectacular players, but they're smart, they're communicative, and it's safety. The biggest thing is like don't make glaring mistakes. Tackle, and those guys do a pretty good job of that. And then the young upside is Craig Woodson, one of the best, I think, young players, especially in the rookie class on this team, a guy who showed up multiple times in the spring and someone who I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up hopping all of those older depth guys over Hawkins, Pettis, and Marcus Epps pretty early in the year. So again, this is the first group that we've spoken of where I really like the starters. I think they've got quality depth where if one of these guys had to play the entire, like an entire game or for multiple weeks, we've seen what it looks like. With Del Pettis, you're hoping that with better coaching and another year of experience, he's not making the same glaring mental mistakes and maybe has a bit more flexibility in coverage rather than mostly being that tight end eraser and the guy you had to keep near the line of scrimmage. And then again, young upside, Craig Woodson, I really do like him as a player. The more I've gotten to like watch and find out about him.
Yeah, not much more to add on the safety. I had them third as well behind, this defensive line / edge or the defensive tackle / edge rather, which we'll get to in a second. I think, again, Duggar and Peppers, when healthy, and I know Belichick said it a couple years ago, it's one of the best safety duos in the NFL. Now, granted, they're aging, so things change and all that. But when healthy, they're still dynamic enough, both of them, to kind of rip all around the field and make a ton of plays. And then the upside of Woodson is exciting. That's one where, kind of like when we were on with Spillane, it was, oh, okay, this is fine. And then as you sort of dive into it and figure it out, it's like, oh no, this is going to be a pretty good player.
Yeah.
I think the same with Craig Woodson. When he was drafted, we were kind of like, okay, that
those were starting safeties,
right? And so, but seeing him play, at minicamp and OTAs, and just kind of learning more about him and what he did at Cal, I think there's a lot of upside there, and that's what you look for, in these position rankings, is guys who you can hopefully count on to be the future at that position. So yeah, I'm excited to see it, and I'm bullish and kind of always have been on the Duggar and Peppers 1-2 punch. So we'll see if they can get back to where they were a couple years ago. All right, 2 more: defensive tackle, edge. Which ones? I don't want to say which one's worse because they're both excellent. They're both in good spots. What did you have at 2? And then before number 1, rather, runner up.
This was tough, but this one for me came down to the top end talent. So I have edge as the second best position group. Now, Harold Landry is probably not going to be an every down starter, although he can be that. I know that everyone loves to point to the low pass rush win rate number, which I understand. But if you look at a guy who's consistently had or been very close to 10 sacks every year he's been healthy. When I looked at next gen stats when they acquired him and I was studying, everyone's saying, oh, he got slower, he doesn't have it anymore. I honestly don't have a great eye for that. I'll be totally honest. I kind of need to either. It has to be a guy I've been watching for years, or if you show me like throughout the years and I can actually see. But watching him, I'm just like, I don't think he's slow. And then the more I watch the tape, the biggest issue with Landry was that he was being asked to contain, mush rush, because they played a lot of mobile quarterbacks. But even when they played like Joe Burrow, he was very rarely allowed to use like his ghost move where he pretends like he's going to stab the guy, takes it away, and then gets around. He can still do that, and his get off is faster than it's been in his entire NFL career, according to next gen stats. So while I don't think he's going to be the player he necessarily was, I still think that as really the leader of this position group, if anything, just by virtue of experience in the system and in the league, I do think he's a good edge one. He's a very good run defender. That's the best part. And he's going to give you pass rush upside, which is a combination we haven't had a lot of from the Patriots on the edge since Matthew Judon. Second guy, obviously, is Keon White, a guy who has blue chip potential. And now that you really give him a pass rush specialist who's played in the league in Mike Smith, Terrell Williams, like the infrastructure he has now gives him every reason to have finally his breakout year. Even though he did last year, he was the best interior pass rusher, and it was not close, although it was in a limited sample size. So now you're hoping that with better coaching, he can translate that on the outside and just be a weapon no matter where he lines up. Then behind him, you got Caleb Chason, a guy who looks like he's going to be very involved. Finished really strong last year with the Raiders. He wasn't a designated pass rusher. It's probably what he's going to be more this year, but he's also a pretty solid run defender. So it's not like an Uche situation where when he's on the field, you are praying they don't run to his side. And Anthony Jennings is an elite run defender. Might not be on the team. Another thing that kind of dings the depth here, but you could say that in multiple spots. Like, I don't know if all 6 safeties are going to make the team.
Right.
But still, it represents the depth they have at that spot. And then the young upside. This is one of my favorite rooms in terms of young upside because you got Braden Swinson, a guy who fell, seemed like because people had some questions about his character. They got Will Campbell in the building, a guy who lined up across from him for multiple years in college. So someone who's more familiar with him, it gives you a little bit more ease. And Elliot Wolf went down and visited him and said that he liked the way he worked in practice. I didn't see anything bad. Seems like Braden Swinson's brought really good energy to practice. I'm not going to lie. I don't pay a ton of attention to how he looks against third-string tackles.
Sure.
Maybe I'll pay more, especially because there's no pads. Once they come on, I will start paying more attention. But I like Braden Swinson. Unless Caleb Chason has a great year, I'd be surprised if Braden Swinson doesn't have some kind of role in pass rush situations. And Elijah Ponder. Now, the fact that he's been running with the very last unit and was undrafted makes me think that unless he really pops this summer, which I think he can, he probably is going to be on the practice squad. And I thought he might even sneak onto the roster. But the fact that Caleb Chason really does seem like he's going to get his way onto this roster makes me feel a little less sure. But again, Ponder, like his measurables are similar to Khalil Mack and who Terrell Williams coached his first year with the Raiders. And there was somebody else who was, Chop Robinson. They're almost identical when you look at their size and their measurables. Now, obviously not the same thing, but Khalil Mack came from Buffalo, another small school. Now he's a Hall of Famer. I'm not making a one-to-one comparison, but you're like hoping that a guy who has the tools with this great coaching can really maximize those. And even though he's undersized, to be an impactful player, even if it's just as a pass rusher. Although I think him and Swinson both have the potential to play like a Chason, where maybe you don't want them on the field on rundowns, but they can play on in those situations if they have to. So yeah, I just love the starters, depth, upside. I think the edge position is very well set up, even if they don't have right now that guy that is probably never going to come off the field and can be that consistent edge rush threat.
We're going to make sure we get that clipped that Taylor Kyles thinks Elijah Ponder is a Hall of Famer. That'll be lovely.
I think I set myself up well. You're not getting me.
I'm joking. It wouldn't have even hit me until you said it that way. So I
hope Wes isn't watching. He's going to flip that shit.
Anyway, no, I'm with you on the edge of the room, though. I definitely Swinson. I'm excited to see what he can bring to the table as somebody who, seemingly fell. And then, too, with Keon, I just think with more coaching, I know you had mentioned sort of him taking guys under his wing at practice and kind of showing them do it this way, don't do it that way and stuff. So I'm looking forward to see how
Anthony Jennings, a veteran, like that's significant.
And with Mike Smith in that room as well, kind of helping those guys along. There is definitely a top to bottom plan for now and the future in the room. So excited to get them going. But the number one is the defensive line. I'll kick it to you to kind of go through it. But, from the top, the Their second-round pick from 2021, Christian Barmore, seemingly coming back healthy. They signed Milton Williams. They draft Joshua Farmer. There's sort of a now then Discord's getting ready in my ear. I have it on the other room, and there was a beep, and I was like, what the hell was that? But there seems to be a plan of attack for now in the future on the defensive line as well. And they'll obviously work closely with these edge rushers. So it's sort of going to be a great 1-2 punch here. But why else do you have the defensive tackles as the number one room on the Patriots defense?
This is the only position where I think you have two guys. And safety is kind of close, but this is the one where there are two guys who are at least elite pass rushers. Like, there is one thing that is highly valuable that they are excellent at, but also the fact that Christian Barmore might be one of the best defensive tackles in football. And Milton Williams has showed that there is the potential for a very well-rounded potential Pro Bowl player in there. I think a lot of that's just going to depend on, one, his usage, maybe not making sure that Christian Barmore has some of the tougher matchups so that Milton Williams isn't getting just – because he's an oversized defensive end or a small defensive tackle. So while he can be sturdy against the run, you definitely don't want to be putting him necessarily at one technique nose tackle, right? You want to try to keep him away from double teams if you can. But still, those are, I think, that is the best 1-2 punch that they have on this entire team. So I think the upside there is really what carries it for me. Behind them, I think Kyrus Tonga is a good nose tackle. I think Jeremiah, and this is a position where I don't love the depth as much as I do at edge. I like the depth at edge much more. It really, again, this is the top-heavy group where I just think these are two guys that don't really need to leave the field either. Like Barmore and Milton Williams, I think, even though Williams has never played like a true starter, it's not because of him, and he seems more than willing to play a much heavier snap count. And also defensive tackle, if you got good ones, you don't really take them off the field very often. So I like Farms as a rotational guy. He can be that like zero technique pass rush guy if you want. I think in this more upfield scheme also will be much better for his skill set because I never loved him as a two-gapper. I thought he could do it, but I thought he's been most impressive when he gets off the ball because we've talked about it. He tends to come off the ball late, but he shoots off so fast that it catches people off guard and he still wins. So I like Jeremiah Farms, especially as like a true rotational player and not necessarily as a guy who kind of has to play more than you want him to. And then Joshua Farmer had 2 batted passes in the first 2 practices that we saw, and a guy that also is very talented. And I think if he's like maybe your nose tackle-ish type with Barmore and Williams, like that's a really, really fun group there. And then Jaquelin Roy, I'm not giving up, man, especially in the defense in that nose tackle role. On early downs, like he was so productive. So if you're talking about kind of relatively young upside, I honestly, for him, that might be a stretch. I think this might be his 3rd year in the league. But as someone, I think that sounds
right. Yeah.
But even so, I think he's a good player. He's a nose tackle who also gives you some pass rush. I think that's more than you can say for Tonga. So yeah, I still think that like if Barmore or Williams did go down, it's significant. Like I definitely don't love the replacement options necessarily, but those are 2 potential blue chip players, or at least just 2 fringe Pro Bowl types, I would say, with Milton Williams and Christian Barmore. And then I like much better the developmental depth that they have now in Joshua Farmer because they haven't really had that in a while.
I'm with you. Farmer, another guy like Swinson, kind of felt like a faller in the draft they scooped up and can kind of bring some potential future juice to that room or even present juice, depending on how it plays out. But yeah, with Williams and Barmore sort of at the forefront of that thing, I think they're easily the top group on this defensive side of the ball for the Patriots. Taylor, go ahead.
And just really quickly, so because this is not like a 5-down front like we've typically seen, they're going to use different ones, and that's where Kyrus Tonga and the nose tackles come in. But really, again, this is a position where there's not going to be, I think, a ton of rotation, which is why I feel better about it. Whereas like safety, they kind of rotate guys through. Linebacker, you have a ton of rotational players, so you know that different guys are going to get involved. Like a defensive tackle, if you don't have Barmore for a week, I don't mind, Farms is more of the nose tackle, and then Milton Williams is your 3 technique. Like, I think if one of those guys goes down, your interior rush is still going to be very, very hard to deal with. Obviously, if they both do, that's going to be a massive problem, but that's where you get deeper into the weeds of like, yeah, if you lose any 2 starters, you're kind of going to be. But if you were just trotting out Tonga, Farms, and Farmer, like, yeah, that might be an issue that was your game plan for a week. But, if one of your starters were to go down and then you kind of needed more of a rotation with those guys, I still think you'd be very competitive.
100%. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our Ranking the Patriots Defensive Position Groups episode of Patriots Daily here as we continue counting down the days to training camp. We are officially in July. It's July 2nd. Training camp starts at the end of July. I believe we're July 27th, if I remember that right off the top of my head. Last week of July, we'll be back in Foxborough, bringing you everything from the Patriots 2025 training camp. For now, we're going to head over to Discord, as I mentioned a few times in this show. So if you are just joining us, head over to clnsmedia.com/Discord, and you can join our chat over there and then drop your username in here. If you're a Patriots Press Pass member, you'll get verified, and then you can ask questions as well. Now, anybody can join the Discord chat. Members can hop on stage with us and talk some Patriots. So we'll head over there for a few minutes, talk some more Patriots with you guys directly. And yeah, that's our plan here. And then we'll be back a little bit more next week as we continue into, like I said, the 2025 season. So thanks for joining us. That's our Patriots defensive position group rankings. Until next time, Taylor, as always, thanks for joining me. And everybody out there, thanks for listening. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And we will see you next time. Peace out, everyone.